Hey, this is William Betancourt, Territory Sales Manager for Radan. A little nervous, but definitely excited. We're coming to you live, so it's always a little bit harder to come to you live. But I'm with Mike Brookman here. He'll be helping us today. Again, excited to go through the webinar. The goal for today would be a couple of things. Well, let's start with some just you guys will be muted at the end of the session. You guys are welcome to ask any questions. Mike Brookman will be monitoring the queue. You can type your questions in, and he'll, at the end of the webinar, he'll go through and review any of the questions that were asked. Go ahead and submit your question, and make sure that the audio is working well. And the agenda for today. So what's the goal for today? We are going to go through Designer, Radquote, quoting, and we'll have some questions. So what is Designer? Designer is our 3D workspace where we can get our eyes on the geometry that we're looking to quote, okay? A lot of times you get customer CAD data that comes in and you want to get your eyes on it. Is it manufacturable, okay? Then we'll go through bending. Bending, we're going to leverage our digital twin. So we'll have a digital twin of your current press brake to determine whether we have the right tooling for this part. Maybe sometimes you have a question on a part, you don't realize whether you have the right tooling or not, or you're questioning whether can I bend this or not. A lot of times the project manager will go back to the press brake lead guy and say, hey, can I bend this? Well, we would give that person the tools to be able to verify whether he can bend this or not, you leveraging the digital twin. And then last, we'll go through quoting. We'll add some operations such as laser bending, hardware, or any custom operations. We'll review the quotes, and then we'll go through some questions. Okay, you guys ready for this? What I'll do is I'll turn off the camera now, and we can just go through and kind of see where we would start. So we would start with Designer, right? Again, in Designer, we would verify. My first question is, we would import CAD data, right? So this CAD data can come from SolidWorks, Inventor, any 3D format. Okay, you can use SolidWorks Inventor to look at CAD data, but in my case, I'm going to use Designer. I'm going to get my eyes on this CAD data, right? I'm questioning, are these parts manufacturable? So maybe I'll go through the assembly, look at the individual parts, kind of question if there's any issues like this part here, right out of the gates. That looks to be an interesting part, right? So can I manufacture this part? Maybe I'll circle back to that part later. And then I'll keep going through and just get my eyes on the CAD data. Technically, we can bring in the 3D model directly into the quoting module and start quoting, but personally, I want to get eyes on this first. So I go through the different parts. Some of these parts look fairly easy to manufacture, so no issues there. Okay, so once I bring the CAD data in and I'm like, okay, I'm going to circle back to this part here, right? So once we bring in the CAD data, now what we can do is I want to question whether that part can be bent or not, right? I have one of those parts was in question, so I can come in here and isolate that part, right? And then what I would do is I'd pass it over to Radquote, which is our digital twin for our specific machine, right? So we would have the ability to come in here and say, all right, how would we process this part, right? So the software would help you with a bend sequence, would help you with a flat pattern. You would then select your machine, your digital twin. You can have any machine regardless of the manufacturer. And then we would ask the software to scan through our tool library and determine whether we have the right tools for this part. Comes up with a tool setup. And then we can sequence through the bench, right? So we can verify, hey, am I going to have a collision or not? Do I have the right tooling? Do I have the right sequence, right? Historically, traditionally, the quoter's going back to, you know, the shop floor and asking them. We eliminate that step here by using the digital twin and verifying that, hey, I can process this part. I go through a full simulation process. It would allow me to see any collisions with the RAM, with the tooling, with the finger stop, any portion of the machine. I can go as far as sending code to the press brake and then see being able to program the machine offline, or just verifying that I have the right tooling so I can commit to quoting this. We can go out and send a setup report. That setup report would contain the tools needed for the press brake for this specific part, segmentation, where to locate the tools, and then the bend sequence. So pretty straightforward there, right? Now that I've confirmed that I can process this part, I can go ahead and maybe at this point, commit and start quoting, right? I want to start my quotation. So the next step here is, once I got eyes on it, I realize, hey, I can process this part. I can send all my parts over to the quoting module. Now notice, Designer allows you to integrate all Radian products together, right? So Designer brings in, you can bring in your geometry into Designer, you can send it to bending, you can send it to quoting or nesting, whichever the operation that you want to do. You can use your OEM CAD package like SolidWorks or Inventor, but in this case, like I said, I'm using Designer. It flows very simple and easy. So at this point, I'm going to say, hey, I'm ready to put a proposal together. So first question would be, do you want to start a new quotation, or do you want to add this to a previous quote? Who is this quote for? All right. And then what we would do here is we'd bring in the geometry right at the top, right? You got the customer, the markup for the customer, total sales price. When we calculate, we can add attachments, okay? We can import 2D CAD, 3D models, DXF, DWGs. We can do a manual part, okay? We can also do purchase components such as hardware, which we'll do some of that in this quotation here. We'll do tubes and bars, any safe parts, common parts that we typically quote. Okay, so it'll bring in all the parts to that assembly, unfold them. We can also potentially change the thumbnail of the assembly, right? So a nice image of the assembly, so that when we prepare a quote document, we can go ahead and show what that full assembly looks like. So here we have the assembly, all the individual parts. What I'll do next is I'll add some hardware, okay? So maybe some pen nuts, some nuts and bolts. If the assembly had the hardware in the CAD data, we wouldn't have to do this, but in this case, it wasn't there, right? So it's very easily, we can come in here, add some purchase components, add some operations, such as riveting or additional assembly time to that piece of hardware. We can go through and answer some of these questions. So notice at the on your right-hand side, you got material, laser, and bending operation. You can customize the amount of operations that are in here, right? Fully customizable operations. In this case, if you look here, you'll see that for the assembly, I have welding, painting, spot welding, riveting. Out of the box, you will get a group of operations out of the box, but you can add custom operations and you can customize the out-of-box operations. For instance, here, we'll go ahead and add some welding, Okay. Here's the welding operation. I wish I could stop this a little bit because there's so much good information here. So you can select which type of welding you want to do. Okay. We're going to add assembly to it as well, right? We can add the time. We can change the quantities here. And then while it's doing a calculation again, it's adding, basically it's nesting all the parts in the background, coming back with a cost for the assembly operations, okay? And then you can drill down to the part as well. The individual parts would have each operation. So you got your material, your laser, your bending, specific to the part. And then at the quote level, you would have all the operations for the assembly. And then you also have the ability to change potentially like pricing for this. The cost of material. You can add delivery costs. It can be based on the weight of the assembly. We know the weight, right? Because we know the CAD data. Or in this case, I'm going to do an area delivery, which that basically would be a radius, right? So area delivery A would be, we would call it 15 miles, 10-mile radius, right? And then you get, last, you would get a nice quotation, right? So fully customizable quotes, okay? Fully customizable quotes. You can email the quotation directly from here to your customer. You can have a reference, maybe a due date, comment, validation, and form of payment. And again, fully customizable quotes. So if you look down here, you can see that there's all the parts, total cost, and then you can add additional comments to the proposal as well. All right, so here's the assembly, here's all the parts, here's the hardware. As I mentioned before, there's additional operations we can share, we can add to the assembly. I think it's a good time to ask for any questions.
Yeah, we actually have some questions, William. This is pretty good.
Well, as much, yeah, awesome, great. I wish this was a little bit more interactive, but I mean, this will work. What kind of questions do we have, Michael?
The first question, let's go with that. Can you add grain restriction to the parts?
Yes, we can. Okay, excellent question. Let's do this. I'm gonna stop sharing my webcam here for a second so that it doesn't lag. So if we look at material, the way we quoted the material, we selected a grain of any, right? So any. You can specify if these are stainless steel parts, brush finish, they gotta go a certain direction. You can specify exactly how to orientate this part, how to restrict that. Okay, yeah, excellent. Any other questions? That was a good question there.
Yeah, actually we do. The next question, how is the sheet utilization calculated?
Okay, so sheet utilization, again, here we can do a number of things. Keep in mind, our quoting engine is connected to our nesting engine, right? So that's a good thing because here we can specify, do we just want X and Y bounding of the part for material utilization, right? That's option one. Option two would be, let's go ahead and nest part A onto one sheet, divide the cost of the sheet by the number of parts. So we call that single part nesting. And then the last option would be dynamic nesting. So grouping all these parts, material types, and thicknesses together and saying, tell me how many sheets do I need when I group these together. So most of our customers will quote use an X and Y bounding of the part, or the single part nesting. In this case, but when you're in a more competitive situation, maybe more dynamic nesting.
That's great. Ready for another question?
Sure, I'm a little nervous here, but yeah, I can. That's
Is
what happens when you go
painting?
live here.
Yeah, no worries. I think everyone's can understand. But is painting available operation?
So absolutely. Custom operations are available. Painting is an operation out of the box. And for painting here, we can come in here and just add the painting operations, for instance here, right? So we can come in and say, hey, I want to do painting. It would ask me a couple of questions. Those questions are fully customizable, but these come out of the box. And the way this would work is, what kind of painting are you doing, right? Maybe 1 layer, 2 layers. Is it easy, medium, or difficult? And what color paint, right? So I'm just gonna go black. We're gonna paint this whole assembly black, right? And then I can go ahead and calculate this. So for painting, what the software would do is it's using the surface area of the part times your painting formula. So it'll go through, calculate the surface area for each part, and then multiply it times your painting formula, and then add all that together, and it gives you a total painting cost for the assembly. Okay, so there it is. And then we can drill down to the painting operation. Again, these variables here that we have are, you know, the cost is not as accurate as you would want it, in the sense of they're dummy numbers, right? So my hourly rate may be $5 an hour versus you guys would be $200 an hour, $50 an hour. So what I can do here is I can go ahead and save this, right? And I would save it, and I can issue the quotation or save it as a draft, right? So I can say, hey, I'm going to issue this, and please remind me about to follow up with the customer on the 20th of December. Okay, and then do I want to delete the original draft? In this case, maybe I don't want to delete the original draft, right? So, or maybe I do. Why wouldn't you want to delete it? Maybe you want to leave both options open for the customer. So if you do want to leave both options to the customer, you would not delete the original draft. That way, if he decides, hey, I do want to paint it, or no, I don't want to paint it, you have that quotation available.
Awesome. A couple more questions, William, and then we'll probably let you off the hook here. But
Excellent.
Are there any metrics that you can review at the end of the year? Imagine that's based on their quotes. Yeah.
Yeah, we got some metrics we can review. Yeah, so there's a couple different metrics. Let's start with maybe reminders. Let's start there, right? So for instance, it will say, remind me. You can look up all the reminders, right? Any quotes that you have to follow up on, from a minimum date to a maximum date, right? So if you got any quotations that you want to follow up on, here's your minimum date there, right? And then any quotes that have a reminder to follow up on will list right in here, right? And then what you would see is, on your right-hand side, you would see the quote, a preview of the quote, right? And then down at the bottom, it says this quotation is in progress. You can say, hey, I won this quotation, or I've lost this quotation. You can also enter a comment. Customer's not sure if he's going to paint or not, right? And then who made that change? Which quarter made that change, right? So that's one thing you can look at. The other thing we can look at is statistics, right? So we can filter through active quotes, customer list, rate, and date. Here's all our quotes. So we're saying, hey, I want to look at all my active quotes. I want to look at all the quotes that have been won and all the quotes that have been lost, right? So you can filter by customer. Here's my customer. I can filter by customer by quote name. And you can see that maybe you can filter by a specific customer as well. Maybe you want to see everything that Betancourt, you've quoted Betancourt Designs, right? So these are all the quotes in progress, and I have 1-3 quotes, right? And then there's some comments there. So maybe you want to search by, one last thing here, maybe you want to search by the employee, right? Maybe you want to get some metrics on a specific employee. You can see that William Betancourt has quoted 3 quotes and has one quote, right? So other
Very
questions?
nice. Last question, actually. Can you connect to an MRP or ERP system?
Oh, great question. So absolutely. So we can do one or two things, right? One way of doing so the answer is yes. And then what we would do is when the quote is 1, we can at that point feed the ERP system and turn this into a sales order, right? We would do the integration. We would handle all that integration ourselves, okay? The option 2 would be that we would export this quotation in a format of potentially a CSV file, and then internally you would do the integration between your ERP system by us exporting that CSV file, which would contain the name of the parts and all the operations. So we had this booked for we're right on the mark, 12:30. I appreciate everybody's time. Apologize for a little bit of the confusion there, but I think overall we went through, again, we went through quoting. Well, we start with designer, then we went through bending, digital twin of your press brake, verify can we bend this part, then we quoted it, and then we set the quotation up. So again, bird's eye view, just it's an opportunity to get out there, show you guys what Radquote is capable of doing. If there's additional questions that we couldn't get to, we'll reply via email. We'll circle back. Appreciate the time, appreciate the opportunity. Have a great, anything else, Michael?
I think we're good, buddy. Good job.
Yep, excellent. Take care.